What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Morgue podcast, where we talk about the whiskey we're drinking and the horror we're watching. I'm your host, Mike, and today I am joined by founder and CEO of McTavish Spirits, my friend Connor Gilbert. Connor, welcome.
Man, it is an absolute honor to be on your podcast. I whipped out the old podcasting gear, well, the old podcasting gear, um, and I'd only do it for you. So thank you for reaching out to me to be on. Um, Definitely an old friend, man. Maybe the oldest in the whiskey space for me.
Yeah, so I was kind of looking at some older YouTube videos, and it clicked, and I kind of had an emotional moment before getting on here. I realized that almost just over 3 years ago, you put me on my first podcast episode ever, which was on your
Oh
on
yeah.
your show. So here we come full circle, and now I get to host you.
Wow, I
We
forgot. Yeah, because you were just so yeah. Now I remember now because you were doing your the same thing you're doing now. You were doing your bottle pairings with horror movies, and I don't even think people knew what you looked like at that point, and they
no,
didn't know what you sounded like. And man, yeah,
it
I
was
should.
the big face reveal on the Who Gives
Yeah,
a Dram podcast.
it was. Yeah, man, shit, I forgot about that. I forgot that I was your first.
You were my first, very special, and that's why I got all choked up before coming on here. But for real, like you've been a friend from day one. You launched your podcast, you gave me a chance. So right when I got this started, I wanted to connect with you either way, and in many ways, you've been super busy. I've been busy, maybe not as busy as you, but it's nice because we get to connect here and just do it on the podcast. So a lot of it's super candid. Like we haven't caught up in a while. You've been up to a lot, like I said. To even say founder, CEO of McTavish Spirits is a big deal because we were talking. You're on your own podcast, Who Gives a Dram podcast. You jumped on another podcast, and you're interviewing celebrities, people in the industry. Um, and then you connect with Graham. And I still don't know kind of like the genesis of McTavish. I do know that Graham said that he was a bourbon lover for 20 years, a closeted bourbon lover. So what was it about him? You guys interviewed so many people. What was it about him coming on the podcast, you guys connecting and saying, "Yo, let's build a brand together"?
Yeah, great question. It was really that. It was, you know, you get offered to start your own brand, and it's like, well, okay, yes, but how do we actually leverage this once in a lifetime opportunity and actually make something of it? And I knew Graham was in his own words, a closeted bourbon drinker. So it was really just a shot in the dark, an email to Graham, and he responded in like an hour and said, "Yeah, let's hop on a call soon with my manager." And I think he was the Graham says it very well. If you go to a tasting that is done by Graham and myself, he always gets the question, why a bourbon brand? Why not
Mhm.
a Scotch brand? And he says that he jumps into things without thinking of it. And a lot of people laugh and they might think that that's a jab at me because me and Graham kind of like take jabs at each other,
Yeah.
friendly jabs.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really not, because and I admire him for that, because a lot of what we do is fueled by overthinking. And
Yeah.
if I overthought this McTavish Spirit thing, I most likely would not have done it. If I overthought podcasting, I most likely would not have done it. So I admire Graham for taking the chance, and I obviously am eternally grateful for him to kind of give me this chance to guide him through whiskey. Because I'm not an expert either, but I am passionate, and when I set my mind on something, I want to do it. Um, so it's Graham just chose, it was Graham because of just the nature of who he is, and the nature of when he sets his mind on something, just like me, he wants to get it done. And I knew that when we started McTavish Spirits, this wasn't going to be something that was um typical of what we call celebrity brands. And we always
Mhm.
knew that that was going to be a moniker that we were always going to have to hurdle over. Celebrity brand this, celebrity brand that.
And in case
But
people
Graham,
are listening, I mean, I kind of always assume that people know the name, but
Yeah.
Graham's IMBD, is extensive,
Yeah.
and illustrious. So I mean, like off the top, back the day he was in The Hobbit. He did the voicing for Castlevania. It was Outlander.
House of
Was
the
it The
Dragon,
Witcher, House of Dragon? So
Rambo 2008.
yes, yes, you gotta
The
conclude that
best
one.
Rambo.
There was
Fun
even
fact.
stuff that I didn't even know he was part of and I was like, damn,
Yeah.
like what an illustrious career.
You would like the show Preacher. Have you ever seen it?
Sorry, yeah. So that was the pairing I did, and that in Preacher, I'd watched it with Mal because she reads the graphic novels. She got me onto them, and I was like, damn, is that Graham in there? And suddenly he's picking up in everything that he's in. So I did the pairing for Preacher, kind of leaning into the horror angle a bit, but yeah, like super illustrious career and
Yeah.
and a ton under his belt.
Yeah, he's he's incredible what he does. I mean, to listen to that man tell a story is unlike no other. He's one of a kind, and uh that is why I say, to weave it all back. Um we knew we had to jump over that the moniker of celebrity brand, and Graham had said from the beginning that, I mean, at first he didn't want to name it McTavish, he didn't want to do anything.
Hmm.
He didn't even want to be like as publicly involved. He kind of wanted to just give it a push and then, help us, but also he just hates the word celebrity. I don't blame him,
Yeah,
especially nowadays.
yeah,
Um, but this is more about legacy to him, and this is more so about what he leaves behind once he's gone, and what I leave behind when I'm gone, and the same thing with the rest of our team. It's legacy.
yeah.
It's something bigger than us, and I knew that from Graham from day one, and um, that is why I knew it was more or less like this is the person that needs to do this, and that was in March of last year.
Yeah, and it's cool because hearing some of his interviews and comments, is he will accredit you in saying that like I guess there was a yin and yang balance here where it's like, then he hops on board and he's like, look, sourcing whiskey, blending whiskey, like I need a little bit of hand holding. And he even joked that like even consumption wise in terms of R&D, you were
Mm-hmm.
light years ahead with being able to go through that. So how do you map out like a vision or like an ethos for the brand? Because, I think off the bat, just, I'm drinking it here. So I'll bring it up here. But so we're drinking the McTavish War Chief. And one thing to note there is on the bottle is age 7 years, uh, bottled in bond, so 100 proof, 50%. Um, Quite a big deal, right? You're gonna pour some. I already have some here because of all my troubleshooting at the beginning. But yeah, that's a bold statement, and I feel like immediately that completely subverts anything we know about like a celebrity brand. Um, in terms of slapping your name on just anything. So I feel like with you leading the sourcing blending side, obviously you really wanted a whole lot of integrity behind this. So what was some of the discussion in the beginning in terms of like the direction you wanted to take it in, how you landed on this 7 year bottled and bond product as your flagship to get started?
It was a conversation of that legacy. Like, how do we come out the gate and make a name for ourselves? Um, and we did a lot of R&D, a lot of drinking, a lot of I mean, it's fun. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like work, but we met up 3 or 4 times in the span of a few months to pick the War Chief, and um, it all just kind of came together, and that's what Graham does real well. Graham can tell a story, but he makes those connections like you do in a story. So
Mhm.
we had came up with the name McTavish because it's powerful, just a powerful name, and it's something where people will look in the bourbon aisle and say, "Why is there a Scotch in the bourbon aisle? That's weird,
Yeah.
McTavish." And then they pick it up, and if you're in marketing, if you can get someone to actually touch your product or look at it for a few extra seconds, the chance of you making a sale skyrocket.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was very calculated on our end, but then we knew we wanted to name it the War Chief. Dougal McKenzie, Graham's character in Outlander, the War Chief, McTavish. It just kind of started to come through, and then we had this idea to well, we had the War Chief in different proofs, and then it was 100 proof, and it's MGP, so the warehouses are bonded. So we're just like, well, this could be bottled and bond, and we could
Yeah.
research it. No other celebrity brand had done a bottled and bond, and we were the first, and it started just to formulate. It's kind of like, and I know you feel this way when something just feels right. It's you
Hmm.
just do. It just felt like this is what we have to do. It was McTavish Spirits, the War Chief. It was a bottle and bond, a black and gold label. Powerful. That powerful kind of bold yet elegant look is exactly how Graham is, how we are as a company. And when we tasted it, um, we just knew that this is the one, um, and that's what we went with.
Yeah, and it destroys all stereotypes of the celebrity whiskey brand. Because, like you said, like if you're really just banking on a name, we know a lot of people, I mean, it would be non-age stated, but it's probably 3 to 5 years, maybe.
Mhm.
Like like it costs more money. You're coming in at 7 years, bottled in bond. Like that's a statement. It's funny because that's something you guys did as a celebrity brand. That other people now, other like non-celebrity brands, are trying to follow suit with what you're doing, and not at the same price point because as we know, like prices have jumped up drastically. But you're looking at something now, and people are like, yeah, well, it's 6, 7 years, so it has to be over $100. And forbid it's bottled in bond. And this one comes in at what, like 70 something or 79.99?
Yeah, it's we sell it online for 74.99. That's our
Yeah.
MSP. If you get, I mean, we're in 7 states retail. You can usually find it for $70 on the shelf. I've seen people sell it as low as 59.99. And
Mhm.
oh man, that's a steal. But
Yeah.
yeah, $75. That was one of the things like when me and Graham were discussing like how do we break that mold, is price point and transparency in the price point too.
Yeah.
Um, transparency on the bottle. We have the bottle and bond, which is in of itself the epitome of transparency in whiskey.
Yeah.
And then you have the age statement. You have on the back, distilled by Midwest Grain Products, bottled by Next Century Spirits, who's our bottling partner. We have all that information um, on the bottle, so people know what they're drinking. And I think that as there's more and more brands on the market, people want to know what they're drinking. Um, they want to know exactly what's in the bottle. But yeah, we wanted that transparent factor to it, and I don't know if people are seeing ours and then doing it because of us, but I have noticed it. I did notice that.
Couple of vampire brothers out there also just
Yep,
put a
I was gonna say, yeah, and we had actually talked to
speaking
them.
of horror, the vampire brothers.
Yeah, yeah, we had talked to them at Bourbon and Beyond last year, and I
Yeah.
remember they went up to Graham and they were asking about the bottle and bond aspect, and Graham was kind of like diverting to me a little bit, so we were kind of talking about bottle and bond with um with Paul and Ian from Brothers Bond, and then they had released their bottle. So they had told us that they were going to release a bottle and bond as well. And I don't think
Yeah.
it had anything to do with us. They probably didn't even know we were releasing one. But
Yeah.
it was funny that they were going on. And I've heard that theirs is excellent. I haven't tried it, and I think it's a 6 year, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't. It might be 7.
I was gonna ask if you knew if it was age stated. I didn't know the age off
It's
it, but
definitely.
I've heard some stellar reviews
Mhm.
with it. And it's funny because I mentioned when I did the live with Fred not long ago, and he mentioned Brothers Bond in terms of like we were kind of, I don't know how we got into celebrity whiskey, but there's a handful I think who are really changing what celebrity whiskey means and kind of debunking all the stereotypes. Because I think again, it's people who are passionate about it, right? Like those two are doing their own product development. They're sitting there, they're tasting, they're blending, just the same way you and Graham sat down, tasted through everything, proofed everything. Like it's not just grab whatever's there, throw a label on it.
Mhm.
And, being someone who's been fortunate to consume quite a bit of like MGP, I always talk about the kind of like the bullshit statement of like, well, it's MGP. Well, like, I mean, when you talk about mash bills, rick houses, like we can go into depth about what MGP is. It's like a huge company with so much there. But drinking this, like, I mean, I've already cracked into this bottle a bit, but
Mhm.
for me, it's familiar, but there's definitely your fingerprint on the expression. And it's in that sweet spot. Like the 7 year ball and bond is it's elevated from your average pour.
Mhm.
But with the price point and where it's at and the proof, you don't feel guilty sipping on this during the week after a stressful day. You don't have to just save it for the special occasion. And I feel like it's one that, of course, like we're friends and, you reached out and said, hey, give it a try. But this is one that I would replace and have as a staple on the bar shelf. Because when you have so many bottles and you start collecting, it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I'll joke that you want to go for a drink and I spend 20 minutes staring at the bar and what am I gonna have tonight? But a lot of times, I just want to come back to a comfortable pour, one that I know just ticks all the boxes for me. And McTavish, it does exactly that.
Well, that means a lot to me, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, obviously, I have so many. You can see kind of some of
Yeah,
them.
just
I have
casually
so
hanging
many
behind you.
bottles here, including my own. And I was just out to me and my brother went out to dinner just right before this podcast, and we got ourselves an old fashioned. And I was like, "Man, this is really good. You want to get another one?" And my brother's like, "No, we have so much whiskey at home." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." So it's like it's kind of like when you're a kid and your mom says, "No, we have it at home." No, we have whiskey at home. Dang it! Get to sit in my PJs and drink whiskey and not pay anything for it. Dang it! But no, it means a lot for me, man. Coming from you, especially with the praise that you've given us in your posts and to me personally, privately,
Yeah.
it really means a lot. And I say that when any of my friends or family reach out and say they like it, which thankfully, knock on wood, happens to be all of them. It makes me feel real good because this is a labor of love for me and for Graham.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it really meant a lot coming from you, the praise that you gave it and the fact that you say the things you said about it. Because I'm right there with you. I think this is at the point where it's a pour where I don't think you're going to be drinking this every single night, but you don't feel guilty of
Hmm.
pouring this on a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening or a Tuesday, like, or putting it in a cocktail every once in a while because it's not a terrible price point. It might not be a once a week, but it might be a once a month. And that's, I think, what we were going for to
Yeah.
start. Um, not ultra premium, but premium, and that was the goal. And I think we accomplished it with this. Yeah, the War Chief is incredibly complex. It's nuanced, it's layered, but it doesn't hit you in the mouth. You can navigate your way through it,
Yeah.
but it makes you think. And I think that's what whiskey is supposed to do.
Yeah. And for me, I don't know. I mean, I did drink it. I think it was just at the start of fall,
Mm-hmm.
but I think when I wrote my review, I mentioned like a fall fair and like caramel dipped apples, and it just immersed me in the carnival, like of being at the fall fair and indulging in all those treats. So for me, I always say like a memorable pour, one that stands out for me is one that transports me to a particular time and place, and I enjoy kind of attaching those like moments of warmth and joy to whatever I'm drinking and
And
having
comfort,
that.
right?
Yeah, it's comfort and being able to when I first took a sip of it, I immediately was like, I mean, I want to do what I do. I want to put on a spooky movie, put on my fancy PJs. Also
Mm-hmm.
funny how you mentioned getting your PJs. I didn't know you're that I'm wearing my PJ pants now as we speak. I just always wear like a more of a formal tee, and I just have the PJ
I got my
pants.
jeans on, but I should have my
Yeah.
PJs on. Shoot, I
In
should
all
have worn
fairness,
that.
like the Return of the Living Dead pajama pants. So I mean, I guess it's on brand with
It is. I don't have a pair of spooky pajamas. I have a pair of Holly Jolly pajamas, and it's a
okay.
onesie that zips up and it's got little reindeer antlers. So it's very cute.
Did,
But I look adorable in it. Anyways,
send pics. I need proof.
send pics. Hashtag send pics.
Yeah.
That should be the name of this episode.
Yeah.
um uh I I say that all the time with Graham. It's actually a bit of ours, and we actually a little bit of inside baseball here. When before
Yeah.
me and Graham do an event. By the way, we're recording this podcast less than a week after I've gotten back from the Make It McTavish tour. So I spent an entire 8 days with Graham, and we did 4 events together, a few bottle signings. So before we go on stage, it's very much a not a character that you're putting on, but it's an embellishment
Of
of how
course.
we are all the time because we're always poking at each other.
Yeah.
Especially Graham, he's always poking at me because he knows I like to be the butt of the joke. It's
Yeah.
how I find my humor. But we do this bit, and it occurred naturally at our first tasting in St. Andrews, where I was going into detail about what exactly you just said. The beautiful thing about whiskey is it doesn't necessarily have to be like a tangible object that you smell or taste. It can bring you back somewhere. And again, this is insider baseball. Because I told a little bit of a white lie. And the white lie was I had uh, notes of leather, right?
Mhm.
Notes of leather. I would always think of like a leather couch. And
Okay.
my nana had a leather couch that I remember the leather smell of growing up, but I added to it and said it was in the basement. And my grandfather, I said it was both of theirs, but my grandfather passed away when I was like 3.
Mhm.
And shout out Trooper. But I kind of I just said like my grandparents' old leather couch in the basement, and then Graham perked up and he he went in on me and was asking what activities were happening in the basement on the leather couch that made me think of it so much. But I say that to say I agree with you. It takes you back to a time of warmth and comfort. And Graham calls this Christmas in a glass. That was one of the first things he said about this when we finished it.
Yeah.
Christmas in a glass. And I agree. I think that the War Chief in and of itself starts very, very much like a classic bourbon. And the Bourbon Life guys said the same thing. They actually equated the nose and the palate of the War Chief to what we call in the industry a dusty bourbon. So that
Yeah.
old school, just bourbony bourbon, just
Yeah.
oak, vanilla, very bold. I mean, it's 100 proof, so it's not going to smack you.
Yeah.
But what makes the War Chief interesting is that mid to back palate, and
Mhm.
this is why we chose it because this is a 21% rye mash bill, so 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malt barley, and it just opens up with the rye and the way the rye interacts with the corn to me and to many other people that agree is it becomes kind of that like festive fruit cake. You still get the sweet, but it's dark
Yeah.
cherry, dark chocolate. That rye spice really becomes prominent mid to back palate. And um I think that's what makes the War Chief special. I think that's why we've gotten as many awards as we have, and everybody seems to like it, is because it's a bit complex in that regard. It's not just it doesn't stay the same throughout. There's changes in it, and um, that's the beautiful thing about whiskey, man.
Yeah. And some of my favorite ryes, you mentioned the Christmas cake, and I feel like that's my favorite note to go to. But with for ryes, I tend to enjoy. So I definitely get that on here. And again, for me, the nose, like when you mentioned the dusty element, like I feel like there's like traditional caramel where it's like bright. But I feel like this has a little bit more of like the burnt caramel, almost like is it like a butterscotch? I mentioned like the hot like caramel and a dipped apple.
That's a
And
good note. Caramel dipped apple is a very
yeah,
good note. Yeah.
yeah, and but it's true. And then I mentioned that like I said like warm bake like the warm baking spices, and that's kind of like my like here's for my cop out like pulling back the curtain like one of my favorite things like I feel like if it just kind of like crosses my palate really nicely and unfolds and those spices come out and it like and it's playful, then the idea of like just warm baking spices, it's comfortable because there's spice that can just kick your ass and
Yeah.
hits the back of your mouth and you're like shit like and then people are like, oh, it's a really long finish because your mouth's on fire and it's like cask strength, and that's sometimes that's fun too.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love when like that baking spice just cascades across the tongue and grows and develops, and this is what this pour does. So by no means is this something that again, sure, it's from MGP. What does that even mean anymore? Again, depending on mash bill age and what
Mhm.
warehouse. I mean, there's so many nuanced things,
Yep.
but it's such a complex and developed pour that really just grows from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. We've had a few people come up to us or me specifically and say, well, it's MGP, it's source. You guys don't distill it. So no one's ever been mean about it, but it's you can
Yeah,
tell it's like, oh well, that doesn't count. But I couldn't be happier with the fact that this is MGP or our the keeper batch one, our rye whiskey is Green River Distillery.
yeah,
The Legacy series, which we just released, is a blend of MGP whiskeys, and it's like that's the route whiskey is going. There are so many brands now, and um, here in America, the economy is not great.
yeah,
I think it might be the same in Canada. I don't know.
yeah.
I
No,
don't.
no, same up here.
Yeah, so it's not great. So it's not easy. There's not many people that are liquid right now, so it's not easy to build a distillery
Yeah,
and then to sit on your product for years and years and years until it becomes of age. Like the War Chief is 7 years old, so we'd have to sit on whiskey for 7 years. But um, the 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 art of sourcing and the art of blending, and I think the Pursuit Spirits guys do this maybe better
yeah.
than anybody right now. Um, is the way that the industry is going, and I firmly believe that within the next decade, let's say, I don't think bourbon is slowing down. I think whiskey in of itself is going to continue to rise.
Hmm.
Unlike craft beer, I think this is going to continue to become more and more popular um, because people love a story and people love uh, something that is honest. And it
Yeah,
doesn't get more honest than saying, hey, listen, we didn't distill this, but we did everything else. And
yeah.
again, the Pursuit Spirits guys, I've never met them, but they do that maybe better than anybody. Um, and not to say that having a distillery is a bad thing. Obviously, that's the goal.
But it's money.
But
Like you said, it's
it's
just and
very
time.
unattainable for many, especially brands starting up. So I'm very happy and I'm very honored and I'm proud of the fact that we're sourcing this whiskey, we're making it our own, we're telling our own story, um, and it's from MGP. I mean, they've been
Yeah,
great partners, and the beautiful thing is with McTavish Spirits, we can go wherever we want. We could
yeah,
if you were distilling incredible whiskey, I could go to you. Hey, give me 100 barrels, and
yeah,
we could make a release, and that could be what we do. Like um it's not just MGP out there.
yeah. It's endless
There's very many
possibilities.
people. There's endless possibilities, and that's
I
what's
think a lot
fun.
of people forget too that Michter's most of what people are even tasting, what they praise in terms of like past 10 years is sourced.
Mhm.
Pappy technically, if you really want to get into it, Pappy is technically sourced, right? Because it's still its own brand and Buffalo Trace produces it. So like, sourcing isn't something new. Obviously, like you said, with the economy, we've moved towards that a little bit more. But it's funny you mentioned the Pursuit guys because um, I champion that brand all day too.
Mhm.
And yeah, sure, I've talked to them briefly, but it's more of just the art of blending because I think the ignorant comment, like I said, is to say, oh well, it's MGP. Again, not looking into which mash bills, which rick houses, what age, all that stuff. And then they're doing that across state line with like three different states or with the rye, I guess, like the two different states. But it's painting a picture, man. Like you sit down and you take a bit of this and a bit of that. It's very intentional and very well thought out. And when you taste the War Chief, that's clear. Like I have a ton of MGP2 on my shelf. I can go pick that out, put them side by side, and can tell you that that's not the same as products B and C. So obviously, I think blending is growing. I think at least it's like a little bit less taboo. It's more appreciated as like an art form.
Yeah.
And like you said, right now, MGP have been great partners. You dabbled with Green River for the rye. This Legacy series, which we'll talk about after. I mean, there's endless possibilities in terms of who you want to work with, what you want to blend, and it's completely up to you.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. And for the record, the funny thing is the War Chief and the Keeper are actually not blended. These are what you could technically call them single barrels, but I didn't want to because they are very well. The Keeper is a batch one, so that
Okay.
was allocated lot that we found, that we sampled, that we loved, that we bought. But the War Chief was and is, and I have a lot of help with people in the industry that have much more experience than I do in terms of keeping the consistency of the flavor profile here. So we'll go into um, the specific lot numbers, rick houses, where on the pallet they are, what floor they're
Okay.
on. I mean, we go into heavy detail to ensure the best that we can, consistent quality between the runs that we do. Um, but it's technically not blended. Now the Legacy series was blended. We
Yeah.
took three different whiskeys and blended them specifically together. And by we, I mean me and Graham. And
Yeah.
Ivy was there too. Ivy did do a lot of it, although she doesn't really like peated whiskeys. So
Well, I was gonna
she
mention
was
it's
like,
cool that you guys brought back in the Scotch element.
yeah, I wish
Um,
I have a bottle of it out there. I wish I should have brought it in, but that, I mean, talk about coming full circle, bro. I mean, that was the Legacy series, and not to quickly pivot, but our motto is a Scotsman's Dream of America, and that represents Graham's uh journey from Scotland to America to pursue his passion in the world of acting.
yeah.
That it and it also partly represents whiskey's journey over to America, which was heavily, some might argue, the most influence from the people of Scotland and their distilling of Scotch whiskey. We didn't have barley, so what did we do? We distilled um, what we had plenty of, which was rye and corn,
Yeah.
and that turned into rye whiskey and bourbon whiskey. Um, and the marriage of the two, the Scotsman's Dream of America, um, is kind of an homage to both of those aspects. And I think the Legacy series being finished in peated Scotch casks is about as much of an homage that we can make to that story.
I need to taste it because one thing you and I always connected on was there's a lot of people with blinders on in like say like the bourbon community, and they'll make jokes and be like, "Oh, I don't drink Scotch." And I guess I mean in their minds everything Scotch is peated, right? In this case we are talking about peated, but obviously the it's way way more diverse than
Oh
that.
yeah.
But the whole commonality is that you and I drink everything, right? Like you and I would connect and talk about a bourbon. We'd talk about a heavily peated Scotch, our love for Ardbeg.
Yep.
And so when I heard this, I was like, yes, full circle, makes complete sense
Mm-hmm.
in like the brand's journey. It's and but for myself as a consumer, I want to taste this because like
Yeah.
taking two of my favorite things and I've never had I've seen them out there, but I personally never had like a peated finish bourbon.
Yeah. No. Well, I will 100% send you a bottle. Don't worry about that. Obviously. Um, but
If I
it's
send you
different.
pics.
You'll have to send me pics.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to send me pics. That's
Yeah.
the deal.
Okay, deal.
Moving forward, by the way, any release we do, because we have a lot of things out, that we're gonna do. You got to send me pics first.
I will start curating the folder. My wife will ask why there's a McTavish Spirits or Connor folder that but it's locked.
You gotta get in with Face ID. No one
Yeah.
else getting in but you, brother. No,
So speaking of the Legacy series, like that, so I was gonna get to that in terms of this is like the first edition, which just
Mhm.
means that there's an open avenue and it's great. You have your flagship products. Is the rye going to be a continuous thing? Is it planned to be a continuous thing?
Yeah, the plan right now, obviously, we have the War Chief, and that's our flagship. That's our baby. The War Chief will always be what it is. The
Yeah,
7 year bottled and bond bourbon whiskey 75-21-4 from MGP, unless we decide to move on from MGP. Again, we can do whatever we want, but
yeah,
it's MGP is the whiskey is fantastic, and they have a lot of it. There's a recent article that came out a few days ago that they're scaling back their whiskey reduction
yeah,
because they have so much of it. I mean, if you look at the numbers, They have every distillery has so much, it's good to be in the whiskey business right now because there's a lot of whiskey out there.
Well, yeah, and if you're going to
Um,
sustain a 7 year bottled and bond product, you can't just go to anyone.
you're right,
Like,
and
I mean, you could, like, I mean, like you said, like if you pivot later on, but in terms of what you guys came out the gate with,
Mhm.
like MGP can carry that for you. Like they can have
Yeah,
where you
and
maybe
it's
you go somewhere else and they only have X amount of H product. Like you want to be able to consistently, for now at least, say, yeah, War Chief is 7 year bottled and bond, and
correct.
you know what you're getting. Of
Correct. Yeah. And you could always buy something younger and age it until it gets to 7 years. And
course.
there's ways around there's different ways to do it. But the keeper will always be a rye whiskey, and that is part of our main portfolio. That's going to be batched. We wanted to batch the rye whiskey because we wanted to have a bit more freedom as to what we release. So batch one, we did 350 cases. It was a 95.5 recipe from Green River. 93 proof is fantastic. It's what I call a bourbon drinker's rye. It's very light, very nice, very 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 sweet for a rye whiskey. Um, batch two could be, who knows? I mean, that's what we wanted to do with the rye. So that's always gonna be batch. And then the legacy series is a bit different. So it's not part of our main portfolio. It's gonna be part of the legacy series. And
Yeah.
the way I think of it is kind of like our answer to BTAC, um,
Okay.
or the Heritage Collection from Heaven Hill. Um, any of those, the Wild Turkey decade series, or whatever it is that they do on a yearly basis. That this is kind of our answer to that, in a very unique way to us, which is why we did the peated Scotch whiskey first. But that is going to be to honor Graham's legacy, but also our shared value ship, our shared value of kinship,
Yeah.
that Graham and I have, honoring our legacies, honoring the legacy of the company, honoring the legacy of his kin, my kin, people like that. Um, and that's going to be always a very limited release that
Nice.
we did 1,000 bottles of legacy series. So it's not like there's a lot. But we wanted to do that because we put a lot of work into it and it was very special. We've been working on it for months and months and months. Um, we didn't want it to be a huge, massive release. We wanted it to be special for those who got it. And
Nice.
once you taste it, you'll understand why we wanted to do that.
Well, I'm salivating, so.
It's I'll get you a bottle, bro. And we're gonna have to send it to the States like we did last time, but that's all good.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna the special network that we get our products into
Yes.
into the Whiskey Morgue
To the Whiskey Morgue, yeah.
make it sound way more cool than it is trying to
It is
get
cool.
liquor into Canada, but it works,
I
and I
mean,
appreciate
yes.
it. And shout out to my brother-in-law Josh for having an American address and PO box for.
Shout out Josh.
Otherwise, this platform doesn't really exist in terms of what I could have access to and
It's true.
and have these conversations.
It's
So,
true.
look, from the beginning, we mentioned that, like that you were the first podcast that brought me on. And, aside from being a friend, aside from giving me a chance on the podcast, what I admired, and I feel like obviously it's left a mark on me, is that you always kept whiskey fun. And this is something that I, when I talk about like with my buddy Eric, the whiskey mutant, and some of my core friends and who I say are like my true, genuine friends in this industry, it's people who have fun with it. And Who Gives a Dram was I'm almost talking like it's in the past, but you and I, before we jumped on here, you said you're going to revive it. So I
Oh,
shouldn't be
I'm
using
gonna
past
revive it.
tense.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was that, whiskey was the catalyst. And that's what I always say is like, sure, sometimes we get more into whiskey conversations, but it's a catalyst for friendship, for chatting about movies or what we're up to
Mhm.
and how life is. So Who Gives a Dram, a primary kind of focus on there would be talking about a particular show or movie you were watching. And sometimes, you had a little bit more options. You would delve into horror, delve into other things you're passionate
Yeah.
about, even fighting and UFC and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I figured like when we start rounding out this episode, that, well, the first thing I need to do is we need to do a proper pairing for McTavish War Chief because I paired it with Preacher and I found my angles, but it was mostly because Graham's in it,
Grabs in
and I
it.
just
Yeah.
had to see Graham shooting the demon in the head, and it just looked really good on camera while I was pouring War
Mhm.
Chief. So I think we should pair it up, or maybe let you take the lead if you don't mind. I hate putting
Yeah.
people on the spot, but I'm
No,
confident in you because I need the.
Yeah, no,
Second nature.
it's easy. This is easy.
Okay,
And
okay, perfect.
for the record, Mike and I didn't talk about this
Yeah,
before. We
no,
didn't talk about this beforehand. He didn't tell me this was
I
happening.
couldn't even get
This is
my camera
complete.
working before we jumped on here.
This is completely off the cuff, but I will say I just smelled it and I got that carnival ish feel to it. I got like fall. I keep thinking fall right
Yeah,
now, and it's no longer spooky season, but to us, it's always spooky season.
yeah,
So at first thing, it was the ending of season 3 of Stranger Things, which I think is in the carnival, if I'm not mistaken. I
yeah.
think it takes place in the carnival where the thing kills the handsome kid there. Um, I believe they're in a carnival or they're somewhere along those lines. Anyways, I thought about that, but then I thought that was a split second. Then I said, smelling it again. I mean, the beginning of Halloween, the first Halloween, where they're outside,
Yeah.
it's a gray day. You could there's literally shots of leaves on the ground, kind of rolling in the wind. That's what I took it that and that's what it took me to. And that's a very basic answer for horrors, for the original Halloween, but it's specifically that scene. And there's also a scene in there where it's an iconic scene where Michael is standing behind the hedge,
Yeah.
kind of like half out looking at Laurie Strode. It just reminds me of that colder, gray but not wet day. Not raining, but it's gray. It's October. You can hear the leaves, you can smell the leaves. That's kind
Yeah.
of what this brought to me as soon as you said that. So my answer is that scene in the original Halloween.
Dude, that's really that's really good. I mean, I was confident because I hate putting people on the spot, and I know sometimes I do it, and I feel bad because they're like, racking their brain, but
Nah, man.
they're just you're like,
You know,
let me just sniff it once.
I live this life, bro.
Yeah. But you know what? It's true because like from what I took from it, the whole like essence of fall,
Hmm.
um,
I
it's
can't get off
completely
that candy apple, by the way. That's a good note.
it for me. It was just and it could be other influences because I was writing something at the time too about like a carnival and whatnot. Maybe I just want to be forever immersed in in fall. But like you said, it's not even like a spooky season. It's not necessarily that it has to be like when I smell it, like I'm trying to go exactly like fall Halloween, but just like fall fair, like yeah, and like you said, so you mentioned the carnival,
Mhm.
and just like wafting smells of all those great things that you get at a carnival, like the
Yeah.
the sweet and the
Like the
salty.
popcorn, like
Yeah.
the caramel popcorn or the toffee popcorn.
And if you want to talk about smoke, I know there's obviously not like peated smoke in here, but there's
Mhm.
like that depth where I guess maybe you can go towards the leather. It made me think of the Halloween scene where I can't unsee it now, but there was like the commentary where I don't know if it was John Carpenter or it was just the sound guy. I don't know, the boom mic shows up in the scene at one point by accident. Like they're not carrying it high enough and you can actually catch the boom mics there. But if you look closely in that scene, there's a cloud of smoke in the corner. And it was just because they were smoking on set.
Oh,
And they were just smoking some cigarettes. So like, there we go. We're gonna add some elements of
yeah.
smoke into the into the
Hey,
tasting notes. But you know
yeah.
what I appreciate too is that you and I did bond over Halloween. We talked about because right when we connected was when 2018
How
uh had
No, it
come out.
was no, it must have been the second one because
Oh,
I didn't
sorry.
start
Okay, we talked about 2018, but yeah, because then it was Kills that would have been coming out
in
when?
2020-ish or 2021
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
Ends came out in 22 or 23.
Shit,
I think it
22, I
came out
think.
in yeah, it was recently, but okay, because Halloween, that man, what a great movie. I'll never forget 2018. It's one of those movie dates I'll never forget. I just know it's 2018, just like I know
Yeah,
Man of Steel is 2013
yeah.
or Guardians of the Galaxy 2014. I just know that's when it is. Um, but we did bond over the new reincarnation of Halloween 2018. Um, that was the first thing that we talked about, I think.
Yeah, and I always feel guilty, and it's funny because you mentioned you're like, I know it's like the big horror movie, but and so many times whether I'm hosting a podcast or I've been on one and they talk to me about like formative horror, I'm like, there's a reason why Michael Myers is Michael Myers. And I know everyone wants to get super fancy with like deep cuts and we can deep dive like this obscure horror film from this year that like
Yeah.
people shit on and now everyone's like into
It's only
nostalgia. So
on Shudder, right? Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, but no, like for real, like most of us, if we had access to it, especially at an early age, whether it was like cable television catching something on TV or like a rental,
Mhm.
like that was the kind like the like Michael Myers and Nightmare on Elm Street and some of those like big franchises. I feel like there's no shame in coming back to it, and I always do too. Do I know, 1,001 different horror films? Of course, but like those weren't what I was watching
Right.
when I was young. Like it was Halloween. So when you have a drink and then you're like, it takes me back to like that is fall for you. That is like the welcoming of spooky season is like the opening
Of
scene
course.
to
Yeah.
Halloween. Then it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
And I want to add on to, I do think I'm a wholehearted believer, and I haven't seen the third one yet. I think Art the Clown is going to be characterized as in that iconic movie villain. If he's not already, there he is. Yeah, he's gonna be. So
Yeah.
I watched Terrifier 2 for the first time maybe a month ago, and I my whole TikTok feed was just Art the Clown, and I loved it. It was just
Yeah.
he's incredible. And
Yeah.
those movies are so bad they're good.
Yeah.
Um, and I still have yet to watch the third one, but I think Art the Clown is going to be up there with Jason Voorhees, with Freddy Krueger, with Michael Myers, with like Leatherface. He's going to be up there with those iconic movie villains, and deserves it too because those movies, although they're not scary, they're the epitome of a slasher, gory film, which is what you
Yeah.
want in in that type of film, especially these days, because kind of brings you back to the 80s because it's so ridiculous and over the top.
The practical effects, just like, yeah, just absurd practical effects, like blood spraying, and Damien
It's
Leone, the writer director, and he started as a
mhm.
practical effects guy,
Yeah.
but what he does is incredible. But what I always say is really cool is that you know 1980s, like here's this film about this dude who was known to like abduct and kill kids. His name's
Mm.
Freddy Krueger. And parents were vigilantes and they burnt him, and here's the story, right? And
Mhm.
how does Freddy Krueger become a household name where there was like action figures and you're young and there's like mom got all mom's walking around with an apron with Freddy Krueger, like he's in your house and he's a household
Mhm.
name. And art is there. And I feel like we
Yeah.
haven't really had something, and this is why I always talk about like the praise for it. It's like, is it overtly ridiculous sometimes? Yes. And like I kind of almost like that in the storytelling in number two, they go in hard with the supernatural elements. Just like Freddy, like, can you kill
Just
Freddy? Who is Art? Art's not, maybe he started off as just a human clown, but he's definitely not.
oh no, no,
Uh,
no. He was possessed. And that's what why the second one was so great.
yeah,
Because it showed you it showed you that, and from what I understand, the third one goes into much more detail as to the supernatural element, which is why I want to watch it. But you
yeah.
said practical effects, and it brings me into something which I think after last night might be the best new horror not series, but uh I guess
Franchise?
yeah, franchise. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
The Smile movies. I just watched Smile 2 last night for the first time. I bought it with my sister, and me and my sister, we've watched our fair share of horror movies. We do Spooky Movie Sunday. Like
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
done that for
nice.
like 2 years.
Scary Movie Social Club, baby.
Scary Movie Social Club, Spooky Movie Sunday. It's what we do. And I tell you what, man, it it was incredible. It was a great movie. I was drawn in from the first shot, and the acting, and I don't know anyone's names. I
I
know
think is number two is people have been talking about like Jack Nicholson's
Jack
son.
Nicholson's son, who's like
Yeah.
there's a scene in I won't give it away, but there's a scene in the film where he's arguing with the main character,
Yeah.
and that he like laughs kind of maniacally, and it's like holy shit, that's Jack
That's
Nicholson,
cool.
and it's so cool. And but that it was so good, and it was so just it. I mean, I saw the first one. I thought the first one was great, and I didn't think that this one was going to be better because usually in horror the second one's not as good as the first one. That's
Well,
just
yeah, because like, so you messaged me and you're like, yo, so I watched Smile too, and it's been on my radar, but I feel like I've been reluctant for that reason where I enjoyed part one
Yeah.
and I thought, okay, like you know what, I set the bar real low for part two. And
Oh,
I'm it's at the
I'm
top of the
telling you,
list.
bro. I'm telling you. I know you trust me.
Yeah.
Watch it. Rent
Okay.
it, buy it.
This weekend I'm doing it.
I swear to God, you will love it. And practical effects in that. The scenes that have practical effects, and you know which scenes. The first one is the ending. That was
Yeah.
real. I saw the behind the scenes. That's a real person, and that's a real practical effect. That's not CGI. I
Yeah.
mean, except when she's like opening the face real wide, that's probably those. But it's
Yeah.
like a real dummy that they're pulling. The second one, I'm not going to give anything away, but you see a lot of that stuff, and it's amazing to be like that is a effect. That's like
Yeah.
bringing me back to the Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
Um, that this is incredible, and it was a great movie. I just want to say that it was a great
It's
movie.
never dawned on me until now, but the parallel of like my appreciation for whiskey, and we'll say, I guess, bourbon for the sake of like American standards and in terms of like the what it's upheld to, but my same appreciation for practical effects. I always joke that like soon as it gets super CGI, I'm fucking checked out. Like I see it and I'm
Same,
like, yeah, I'm
dude.
like you create this creature and you know it's a little bit much for me. But like the idea of like again, like here's bourbon, like you distill something, you put it in a barrel. There's like certain things you have influence over, but it's like an art
Tangible
form.
things. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's tangible. And
yeah,
same thing with practical effects.
yep.
And you know, kind of coming back full circle to like the Terrifier franchise. Now I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, cool, like that's an awesome scene, like super gory, over the top. But I'm like, how did he do that? How did he pull that off? Because now you know that it's all very practical, and
Mhm.
I'm more so curious and invested in how they're pulling this off on screen. And there's a few
Yeah,
people in the industry that I've been chatting with. I want to get some more people into like who do practical effects on here. That's been like one of the goals, is to
absolutely.
kind of like pick their brain
Hmm.
just since I have the platform. But um, in terms of number three, man, like I will say this, like again, without giving too much away, there's definitely art is art.
Hmm.
He's doing his thing, and it's fun. But I love like it brought me back to like Black Christmas, and it's a very different movie.
Hmm.
But the beginning, like being in the house and just I didn't think the Terrifier franchise could make me feel creeped out after like part two. I was like, yo, I'm here for the ride. I love it. I love art.
Hmm.
He's funny. He's like, yeah, again, like kind of like a Freddy. Like he's, you know, perverse and cynical, but also like he's
You kind of
charming
root
and
for him a little
humorous.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you remember. And then the beginning of three, I was like, oh man, I kind of got goosebumps because like you're
Mm.
desecrating the holiday. And you know, Christmas is like the most joyous, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like it captures. And again, when we talk about let's even bring it back to McTavish then, like even capturing like Christmas in a glass or a memory or essence in a glass. I'm like,
Hmm.
they do it spot on and
Hmm.
then just fucking run it to the ground in like the best
Hmm.
possible way. So your homework is you're gonna watch Terrifier. I don't know, I don't know if
Yeah.
it's streaming yet. It should be soon.
Yeah. I
It kind of
mean,
finished its theater run, but
yeah, I hope so. I mean, Smile 2 is already streaming, and that came out well after Terrifier 3. So
yeah,
um
yeah. So our
there's
homework is I will
yeah.
watch Smile 2 and then
Oh
when
yeah,
possible.
dude, you don't gotta pull my leg to watch Terrifier 3. As soon as I see it, I'm buying it and I'm watching it. I don't care what I'm doing. There's two more movies we quickly need to just touch on.
Yeah,
One we talked about, Long Legs.
yeah,
Um, real quick, a little let down.
yeah.
I think that is so pumped up to be the best horror film of all time or one of the best. It wasn't really a horror film. It was
No.
more of an intense thriller, dramatic movie with lots of intense scenes, more so than horror. However, beautifully acted, great cinematography. Nick Cage is freaking Nick Cage. He's a legend. Put him in whatever Hall of Fame there is.
Yeah,
Give him all
yeah.
the kudos. Um, and it was freaky. However, because of how much people were just putting it in our face that this is one of the best,
Yeah.
didn't really consider it a horror movie. I loved it though. I definitely loved it.
Yeah, it was one that um and I mean I'm gonna stop myself from going off on a tangent, but like it was one that when when I watched it again, it was like the atmospheric dread and just it being shot in winter. and
Hmm.
just like grayscale, gloom and
Gray,
doom.
white. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
just it did it for me, and the acting is superb. And yeah, like you said, Cage, like we don't even have to say anything. But
Legend.
as a caveat, like what was cool is like reading some interviews with like Oz Perkins and Cage. They were talking about like Nicolas Cage's mom having schizophrenia with him growing up,
Hmm.
and him hearing her kind of have these episodes. And I thought like just in terms of like appreciation for acting. I guess for me, there were, yeah, like you mentioned, there's two things that fell short for me. I feel like the ending became a bit chaotic in terms of trying to like wrap up the story.
Yeah.
But also I think, yeah, just completely mismarketed. Definitely creepy. Like, when they show him kind of like that he's like gallivanting through the house.
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, that's fucking super creepy. Like that he's just kind of maybe making his way through your house. Definitely creepy elements. Kind of like reminded me of, the people would say Silence of the Lambs. I think Seven as well kind of reminded me of
Yeah,
like
seven.
Seven.
It's very on the same. Seven's more of a thriller, but
Yeah.
it's on that same level of like intensity for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those that I still think I enjoyed, but in terms of like, I think because where we are at the end of the year, everyone's looking at their like top horror movies
Mhm.
of the year, which is why, these come to mind. But yeah, I don't know if it completely
I
does
wouldn't
it
put
for
it
me.
there.
Yeah.
I think I'd put Smile 2 over Long Legs, to be completely honest. And that's no hate on Long Legs. I just don't. I think it's a different it's a different category. But I also, and I don't know if you've seen this film yet, but if you haven't, not to give you more homework, and
Yeah.
I don't think you mind this homework.
Yeah. No,
Um,
no, this is, you're
The
just giving me
Visit.
pairing ideas.
The Visit. Have you seen it?
No.
So The Visit is a film. I don't know the actors. The children actors in it are actors in it are very good. But the mom, who's not really in it a whole lot, but she is played by the woman who plays Agatha in the MCU,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Catherine Hahn. Catherine Hahn.
Okay, yeah,
She's not in it for a while, for a much, but man, I wish that gives me goosebumps.
yeah.
The premise of the movie is that the mom is estranged from her parents, so the
Okay.
kid's grandparents, but the kid's grandparents hit him up, is like, we want to take the kids for a week, and the mom is like, she's reluctant, but the kids want to do it, so she says okay, and she kind of, they have to take the train to go over to see them, so
Hmm.
and they spend a week with their grandparents, and man, when I tell you, you can kind of see what's coming, but when it's confirmed, I was like, holy shit. And not many movies make me do that, man.
Yeah.
I don't get that holy shit feeling so much. But The Visit, I mean, I've seen it twice, and I knew what happened the second time, and it still gave me the heebie-jeebies.
I
It's a
long
great
for that
movie.
that feeling because I feel like there's a level of like desensitization in terms of
Yeah.
watching these films, and you've seen it, you've seen a whole bunch of them, you've seen it all. So like when I have that moment where it's just kind of, yeah, that like, holy fuck, like what the hell did
Mhm.
I just witness? Then it's something that's left an impression. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of like I'm sure it's not because the movie I'm thinking was like kind of ridiculous in like an 80s movie, but it was called like Grandma's House. But same thing where like they're unsure of like where mom is, they get sent to their grandparents' house and things just get really weird. But
When old people are weird, it's super
yeah.
creepy to me. It's really creepy to me.
Well, dude, look at
Especially when they
fucking
move
X.
weird.
People are like, X is amazing, and I'm not gonna shit on anything right now. But like, they obviously people want grandma with a pitchfork naked. That's what.
I haven't seen X. That's the new one.
No, so X was the first one where like they're out in Texas. They're I guess it's set in the 70s. They're making like the porn film out on this property. But yeah, that's the first one in the installment of the films. But like I kind of gave you a bit of a spoiler, but like just like old people in terms of like I enjoyed the movie. Again, like X was okay, but people are just going crazy about it. Like one of those, like almost like a long legs, where it's just like, this is the game changer. Like this is
Dude,
amazing. And I'm like, bro, like if you like old woman naked with pitchforks, then yeah, I get it. It's creepy.
which
It's
I
but
happen to love. So
yeah, yeah.
it's the
Go look
same
at
thing.
Connor's search.
Yeah, don't, please don't. It's the same thing, dude, as I recently watched for the first time Paranormal Activity. No, I'm sorry, not Paranormal Activity. The Blair Witch Project.
Okay.
And I can see why people are like, oh, this is one of the best films, especially at the time. dude, I watched it. I was like, that shit sucked. It was not
Yeah,
good. And the ending, my dad, who's a big burly guy, doesn't get scared, all that. He's like, isn't that creepy at the end? And have you seen the movie?
yeah.
So like, I don't. It's so old. I don't care to spoil it. Like when
Yeah, no,
he's
no,
just like
we can
standing
spoil
in
it.
the corner, and they had
Yeah.
mentioned that before. Like
I always
I was
joke
just
that that's
like,
my basement. That like, and you walk down my basement, like the guy standing in the corner, like that's what my my basement looks like.
oh,
But
really? Oh, that's kind of spooky.
I think with I'll send you pictures. Um,
10 pics.
add it to the
Yeah.
folder. But the thing with Blair Witch that I look at it now because I revisited it years later,
Mhm.
and obviously it doesn't have the same effect because I watched it when it was coming out, and it was the emergence of the internet. They
Mhm.
market it as a true story. I used dial-up to go to the website that said, "Oh, people have gone missing," and they had like a missing persons page
Yeah.
on there. And that's so then when I'm watching this grainy shit that's making me nauseous and like triggering people with like epilepsy, it's more so of like what was built around the film
Yeah.
than the actual film itself. Yeah, there's creepy elements like, oh, what's that? Like, and you have like the stick ornaments hanging in the
Yeah.
forest, and
Of
but and
course.
then at the end, yeah, everyone always talks about like dude standing in the corner. But I just yeah, like I can see how like if you just watch that later on,
Mhm.
it's not a great film or even necessarily
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, no. And one more I'll mention, and I know I don't even know how long we're at to be completely honest, but I'm having a ball.
Yeah,
Um
you're like get it
uh
all out.
um is the rest of the year, and I did a podcast with my brother recently about my most anticipated films, and this was essentially for the second half of 2024 because
Yeah.
I think Dune 2 will probably be the best film of the year if I had to guess, just
Okay.
in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah, I think that's
scale
fair.
and everything that goes into it. It was a fantastic, fantastic movie. Um, but Nosferatu has been my most anticipated movie this year, and the fact that it's Robert Eggers, the fact
Yeah.
that it's Bill Skarsgård as Count Orloff, the fact that you have what's her name, Depp, as the main character, who's a beautiful young. Well, she might not be young, I don't know, but she just looks like that type of person that from the original story.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. Um, and the fact that I watched the trailer a million times with the gothic nature of it,
Yeah.
real castle shots, not much green screen if at all on location. I think that movie might be might be the best movie of the year if it's done the way I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Conversely, there was a Salem's Lot film that came out on HBO Max, which was not good, which I wish was good.
Yeah.
Um, so but I have a lot of hope
I
in
think
those throughout.
like you said, the people behind it and the treatment that is being given, um, that there's obviously that's why there's a lot of promise
Mm,
to it. It seems like they're respecting it in their approach and like whether it be the talent or like you said, like filming on site in
mm,
actual castles. Um, a friend of mine posted that they are moving the casket around to certain theaters, the actual one from the film. And I don't know, we got to see the
amazing.
tour of where it is if it lands near you.
Oh, I'll be there
I definitely won't
in
get
the
it in
casket
Canada. I have to make the trip down to get the
in the
Nosferatu
states.
casket.
Yeah, yeah. That I did not know that. That's amazing, and that's just marketing 101. Smile does it with the people smiling in the back of like
Yeah,
sports events, sporting events, and stuff like that. It's marketing. Blair Witch. I mean, market McTavish. Marketing to tie it all back.
yeah. We can
Marketing.
always bring it back. Yeah,
You can always it's always it's a big weave, and you always bring it back. But it that's what it is. What separates things nowadays is the story and how you build that story, whether it's a whiskey brand or a movie. It doesn't matter. People want a good story. People want to care about what they're consuming or what they're viewing, and the people that do that will succeed. And I
yeah,
think I think Nosferatu does that. I think Smile does that. I think Blair Witch Project did that. I think Longlegs did that, maybe better than anyone in recent memory.
mm,
But that's what we're trying to do with McTavish as well. To bring it all back.
yeah,
Moving forward, we want to tell a story that connects with people. We want to create a whiskey that connects with people, and we want to stay true to what it is that we've built the company on. We there's no bullshit with us. You
Yeah.
get what you get. We're gonna do our best to release uh fantastic whiskey at fair pricing, and you're gonna get a story in each bottle. There's not gonna just be something that's just released. There's gonna be a story behind it. There's gonna be a
Yeah.
connection. It's all gonna come back. It's all gonna come back to the central point of a Scotsman's dream of America. And that is our mission statement. That's what we do. And um, I'm excited to for you to see what's happening and potentially happening in 2025. We have, I think, next year. I've been saying it to my team, but next year is the year of McTavish, and I'm very confident in
Well,
that.
before we jumped on here in our brief conversation, I mentioned that there's a clear momentum building. I said even just kind of from the outside,
Mhm.
I should have inside knowledge, but like you're busy and I'm busy, so
No,
I
you
don't have.
should.
This is literally me and Connor catching up here,
Mhm.
just publicized on a podcast. But um, it's as a friend, it's as genuine as it gets. I sometimes forget that, you know, like Graham McTavish and kind of like all his acting gigs. And I think, but that's important too, because you know what? The truth is, yes, um, maybe there's people who are new to whiskey and they just love him for his acting, or maybe they hear him talk and they share a story. And like I'm such a sucker for someone with an accent telling me a good story, especially if they're British or English or Scottish. I just melt in my chair and you could tell me stories all day.
Mhm.
But like whatever the angle might be, I feel like you're doing a unique thing where the whiskey connoisseur can appreciate you and be like, yo, you can't question that. Everything's transparent. It's on the label. But they're also creating some intrigue for maybe people who are new to whiskey. And then the extension of the Legacy series just again opens the stage for whatever you guys want to create as a one-off, as a limited, to tell more stories with the Legacy. So I'm super pumped for this, man. So in terms of where we can find you, um, you can maybe plug your Instagram if you wanna if you want people to send you pictures. But in terms of McTavish, in terms of McTavish, where's the best place to look for it, to pick it up? Where are
Yeah,
you guys? This is your chance to kind of like pitch it.
sure thing. McTavishspirits.com is our website. So if you check us out there, we have a newsletter that we release just about once a month. Sometimes we put it out a few times a month, and that will give you the insider info that you're looking for before we put it out to the public for the most part. We released our Make It McTavish tour on there before everybody else. We released the Legacy series on there, pre-order before everybody else. So McTavishspirits.com. Also, at McTavish Spirits on all handles. So Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Threads is what we utilize the most. So you can find all of our information there. Follow Graham. Graham McTavish is a great. He's a great account to follow. He mixes in a lot of his own acting and personal life too. So he's great. My handle is Connor_whiskey. And again, I post mainly about the brand updates, but I like to keep up with my original tagline: whiskey, movies, MMA. I still keep up with my movies. I still keep up with my MMA. I just reposted a 6 shot of John Jones knocking out Stipe Miocic with a spinning heel kick to the liver. So I still keep up with that stuff, even though my life is consumed with whiskey now. But yeah, Connor_whiskey there on Instagram. And yeah, our I'm not sure when this is going to be released, but you can most likely still order our Legacy Series 1 online. It's going to be very limited, and I'm sure at the time this is released, there's not going to be much left. So go get that. You can order the War Chief online as well. The Keeper Batch 1 is sold out. If you're in Kentucky, Texas, Wisconsin, Alaska, Florida, and Georgia, you can buy the War Chief in those states. Some of them will have Legacy Series. I think Texas still has some of the Keeper as well. So we have a store tracker on our website. You can go see exactly where we're sold in every
Nice.
single state that we're in. Um, and that's it, man.
I
That's
feel
all
I
the
feel like
plugging I
I'm
got.
obligated to push up the release date on this
No,
now.
no, no,
Just
no, no. Don't do that. You got other things, and that's the beauty about the a limited time offering. If it's sold out, then sorry, you missed it.
yeah,
Better
then you
luck
just
next
hope
time.
then you just hope you can get the next one.
Yeah.
All right, well, Connor, thank you, man. I appreciate you doing this with me. That's it for this episode of the Whiskey Morgue podcast. Me and Connor, we chimed off about what we're watching. I want to hear in the comments what you're watching, what you're drinking. Shoot me some ideas. What should we talk about? I'm all ears. I feel like I need more of that. I enjoy having these conversations with everybody, and that's why we got this started and built this community. So the typical stuff. Remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode. Connor, let's finish this off. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.